Well, hello and welcome, Dr. Goldhamer, to our show, Power of Food to Heal. I really appreciate you being here today. And for everyone out there, I just want to let you know that this is about empowering you to have peace of mind of what you're doing for your family and yourself. And Dr. Goldhamer is a big influence in the area of nutrition and health. And I'll just tell you a little bit about him and then we can get started. So Dr. Ellen Goldhamer, if you're not familiar, is the co-author of The Pleasure Trap, and that is Mastering the Hidden Force That Undermines Health and Happiness. Very excellent book. I had the good fortune of studying some of your classes in a diet and lifestyle program that I was doing, so enjoyed that. He's the founder of True North Health Center, which is a state-of-the-art facility, and it provides a full spectrum of medical care, including medical, chiropractic, psychotherapy, counseling, massage, body work, the works. So it's a well-equipped facility. And the nice thing is they have a residential health education program that Dr. Goldhamer has actually founded and directed. So he runs that program too. So maybe Dr. Goldhamer, if you want to tell us a little bit about that and how your facility works, maybe start there.
Sure. True North Health Center is 70-bed facility in Santa Rosa, California that specializes in medically supervised water-only fasting. And then we use a whole plant food SOS-free diet to help people learn to get well and then hopefully stay that way. We use fasting from 5 to 40 days on water only, which is pretty radical, but it works well at treating conditions that are primarily caused by dietary excess. So things like cardiovascular disease, like high blood pressure or type 2 diabetes, autoimmune diseases, and cancers like lymphoma. So we have a wide variety of patients. We've got a dozen clinicians on our staff. We have a staff of 70. We see about 1,000 new patients a year come through our inpatient program. And we've been doing this a long time. So this is our 35th year in practice. And we've had an opportunity to work with a lot of different people using this very ancient practice of fasting combined with a whole plant food program in conjunction with diet and exercise.
Yeah, and well, you don't look old enough to be around that long doing this.
Well, my grandson, who's 14, says I'm the AO, which stands for Ancient One. So. Oh
no, I kind of like that though. That just means wise, right?
Well, that's the way I took it, but I'm not so sure.
Actually, yes. Well, that's wonderful. So, how did you get even started on that path? You know, it is an ancient, method, as you're saying, but I don't think it's really mainstream. I wasn't real familiar until I classes.
Well, I got started very early when I was about 16. Actually, I decided to go into this field of alternative medicine, and I'd read a book by Herbert Shelton and met a doctor named Gerald Benish, who was a practitioner that used fasting. He said it was the best job in the whole world because the body did all the healing and the patients did all the work, and all I had to do was take credit for it. So I decided that was the job for me. I was motivated to look into health because I was trying to beat Dr. Lyle, our clinical psychologist at basketball back then. But despite adopting a whole plant food diet, it never worked because he adopted the same diet, and to this day, he still beats me every time we play. So it was a complete failure, but it got me interested. I was also inspired by my uncle, who was a physician, who said that I could not go into alternative medicine, that it was the worst possible thing you could do, that nobody should go to a doctor like that better I should be a communist spy.
Wow.
And so that was very encouraging because my father said that anything that made my uncle that mad and angry couldn't be bad. So I should stick with my guns, and so I did.
Good.
And now here we are many years later. And it turns out that fasting that we use, which was considered criminal quackery early on, now is cutting edge research. As it turns out that more and more people are recognizing that these processes that are stimulated by fasting, whether it's autophagy or increasing biomarkers, et cetera, are associated with reversal of the aging process and promoting recovery of health. And so, I feel like we're finally now getting to the point where fasting, although it's not accepted, it's more acceptable, and the mechanisms by which it works, we're trying to validate through our True North Health Foundation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit research foundation, and our mission is trying to figure out how to do this better, how it works, and also provide public education so more people can be aware that health does result from healthful living, and that they have to focus on healthy living, not pills and potions and powders and treatments if they're going to be successful.
Exactly. It's just so epidemic, the use of medicine and surgeries and treatments. And, even in my own family, we've had some problems with that too. And it's like, go back to let the body heal itself. And what can we do to encourage that? So I know that's what your work is all about. And you've had so many successes.
The leading causes of death in our society, heart disease, cancer, and stroke, are not the actual causes of disease. The reason people get heart disease, cancer, and stroke is because we smoke, we drink, we eat animal-based foods and highly processed fractionated oil, salt, and sugar.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we advocate a whole plant food diet that's free of SOS. SOS, of course, is the international symbol of danger. It stands for salt, oil, and sugar, which are the chemicals added to food that fool the satiety mechanisms of your brain and result in obesity and the diseases of dietary excess. The reason why people are fat and sick is because they're eating foods that fool their brain, so they consistently overconsume. It'll work in animals, it'll work in humans. All you have to do is put the chemicals in the food, and you end up with obesity and the consequences of dietary excess. What we do with fasting reverses that. So it's not like shocking to think that if people are getting fat and sick from their diet, if you don't eat, that the body tries to reverse that. It's not rocket science.
So yeah, people become addicted to these, SOSs, and then, once you bring them in and then you get that fasting going. So how does that work in eliminating that addiction?
Well, it's exactly the same way it would work in any addiction. If you're addicted to alcohol, you have to stop drinking. And if you stop drinking, eventually the body unwinds it. If you use something like fasting, it's the same way, whether it's drinking or smoking or eating chemicals like sugar, oil, and salt. If you stop eating them, eventually you adapt. If you use fasting, it happens a little quicker.
Okay.
So it's a facilitating mechanism. Sometimes it's so difficult for people to, say, quit smoking. They just can't get through those a week or two. Whereas in fasting, by the second day, there is no craving for cigarettes.
Wow.
Some people say that's because they're so miserable from the fasting, they don't think about smoking. It's not true, though. The processes of detoxification are rapidly sped up during fasting, and it's just one of the benefits of this very ancient practice.
And see, people that are struggling with things like that don't even know that this is available for them. So that's why we try and get these messages out there to people. And you're doing such an amazing job of doing that, and doing talks like these and getting the word out. So after they go through a fast, and it varies from person to person, patient to patient, what happens after that?
So, the first thing that happens is patients would try to determine if fasting was a good thing for them. So they can go to our website, healthpromoting.com, and fill out what are called registration forms. And that gets us their medical history. And then they can call and have a no-cost phone consultation.
Oh.
So I offer a free phone consult. They can call me. I'll talk to them about whether or not fasting is appropriate for them, and whether it's at our facility or one of the other facilities around the country. There are other places where we have doctors that we've trained that are operating facilities, sometimes closer to their home.
Okay.
We will make the appropriate referral if we think fasting could be of some help to them. Once they come to the center, they see one of our doctors. We have 5 attending physicians that are not idiots, so it's a novel experience for people because they get to work with a doctor that actually thinks about getting well. Well, think about it. If you have high blood pressure and you go to a regular medical doctor, they will tell you, take these pills, and they will promise you, if you do what you're told, you'll never get well, that you'll be sick the rest of your life. Because they'll tell you, listen, you're going to need to be on these drugs forever because you'll never get well. Whereas our doctors are going to say, look, if you're a good candidate, you should be able to heal enough to eliminate the need for medication, normalize your blood pressure, and if you're willing to do dangerous and radical things like eat well and exercise and go to bed on time, then you should be able to sustain those results. And in fact, we published a study with 174 consecutive patients in it with high blood pressure, and all 174 patients were able to lower their pressure enough to eliminate the need for medication.
Wow.
So we have the largest effect sizes that have ever been shown in treating high blood pressure in humans, with an average effect size in stage 3 hypertension of 60 points. And that's not taking into account the fact they started on meds and they end off meds. So 60 points plus whatever effect the medication was having. If you have essential hypertension and you're willing to fast long enough to normalize your blood pressure and then eat healthy, there's a very good chance you can sustain normal blood pressure without the chronic cough, fatigue, impotence, and premature death that comes from conventional management of high blood pressure with medications.
That's the scary part. There are so many side effects, and you don't know, even it can be different in a different person too, I'm sure. But
Sure.
But to have that kind of result so quickly is amazing. fasting, and your body can just heal itself given the right tools. And that's
Bad news is you have to keep eating a health-promoting diet. So you're eating a whole plant food diet without the salt and sugar, which means people are giving up the meat, fish, fowl, eggs, dairy products, the oil, the salt, the sugar, the alcohol. Basically, anything they look at that they really want, they can't have.
Yeah. Well, that could be depressing for some, I'm sure.
It
But
is.
at the same
Of course
time,
it is.
feel better, after having done that. Does that increase the compliance? Does that seem to change people's motivation when they?
What motivates people best is pain, debility, and fear of death. So most of our patients that are having, say, autoimmune disease, where they have agonizing, debilitating pain, and they get well, and if they go back to eating greasy, fatty, slimy, processed, dead, decaying flesh, they get pain again. Very motivating.
Very motivating.
So if you can get people that are miserable and get them happy, and then they want to stay happy, that's a little easier. If you have a person with a very minor problem, maybe they just want to lose a little weight or something, it's a little tougher battle because they don't want to give up their addiction. You know, think about your friends that are alcoholics. If you know their lives start to fall apart around the alcoholism, but if you go up to them and say, hey, you know, your life sucks and it's because you're drinking, they don't go, oh, it's the alcohol?
No.
I had no idea. Oh, thank you. I just won't drink anymore.
Right.
No, they tell you to mind your own business. They don't want to talk about it. And the same thing's true. If you see people that are sick and suffering as a consequence of dietary excess, they don't want to hear about eating your whole plant food diet. They don't want to hear about giving up all their short-term pleasure-seeking, self-indulgent behavior. They want you to leave them alone. And so that's why we're limited to working with people that are either very sick or very smart.
Very motivated, yeah, especially if they're in a health crisis. I would think that that is what you probably see most, I would think, because
See a lot of people in health crisis, absolutely.
And what can we do to, get people to know more about this so that they get out of that trap that, you talk about?
Well, what we're doing is we put out a website called fasting.org, which is a fasting compendium website. It's the face of our foundation. We put out a book called The Pleasure Trap, which you mentioned. We have a number of vegan SOS-free cookbooks that are available. We have the center's website, healthpromoting.com, has a list of all of our articles, all of the studies that we've done, other people have done. We have something called True North TV, which is a lot of clips of lectures that we've done. It's all freely available.
Great.
So we're trying to make this information readily available to people that are interested in it. I do a lot of these webinars. I go to each of the chiropractic and naturopathic and some of the medical schools and do what's called the grand rounds, where we talk to the students about how they could do something worthwhile with their life and go to heaven instead of hell. So, try to teach the doctors. We have an internship training program at True North Health where doctors can come at no cost. They spend a month with us. We train them how to use diet and fasting to help their patients get well. We're a part of what's called the ND residency training. NDs can come for a year as part of residency training, and they'll work with us for a year. Texas A&M Medical School now recently added us as a part of the internship program so that functional medicine doctors at Texas A&M can come and rotate as part of their training at the True North Health Center. We have a lot of doctors, particularly end-of-career doctors, that want to do something worthwhile with their life before they retire, and they might come learn how to do something useful like this. So I think there is increasing interest. We're trying our best to get the word out about what options people have. Publish the papers. We published a fasting safety study showing that this can be done safely. We recently published a paper in the British Medical Journal on the successful treatment of follicular lymphoma cancer with fasting, and we have a 3-year follow-up showing that not only can people overcome lymphoma, but they can sustain themselves in free of cancer if they're willing to do these diet and lifestyle changes.
Right. And that's the thing. There's so many epidemics of different diseases, the autoimmunes, the lymphoma, all these things, that are rampant. And just being able to know that there is hope, that's what you're offering.
Sure.
Hope. And I think a lot of people, like you said, the smart people will want to take that on, even if it's a little painful.
Sure. We're doing a study right now with the Mayo Clinic on primary prevention of stroke. One of the researchers at the Mayo Clinic thought, what if we could prevent people from having strokes rather than treating them after they've had a stroke, which as a neurologist is what he does. And so he looked into the different things that were associated with stroke prevention, and lo and behold, he discovered that fasting and diet and exercise turned out to be the things you could do to reverse the biomarkers associated with stroke risk. So we're about halfway through a study now where we're enrolling patients that have these biomarkers associated with stroke risk.
Mhm.
We're putting them through periods of medically supervised fasting, and then we're getting them to eat a whole plant food diet. And now there's a couple companies we're working with that are actually making SOS-free food available. Those include Mama Says and Leafside. And now they've made, in addition to their regular plant-based food that's low in sodium and all that, they have an actual SOS-free version of it to meet our needs. And we're going to see whether or not if you provide food to people, if it'll improve their ability to comply, and ultimately if that reduces the risk of stroke. And if we can, obviously that would be huge, because people spend a tremendous amount of money as a consequence of stroke. And
Right.
if we could prevent that, that would be great. You know, people wouldn't have to find themselves unable to talk or move, lying in some nursing home bed waiting for people to come and change their diaper.
Mhm. Yeah, and putting that data together is so huge. And when that is all completed, finally people will start to take it seriously, and they should. And that you're teaching it to the NDs and the physicians. That's where I think a lot of that has to come from, the educating of them, because people do what they say, and to some extent, a lot of people will do that. So
Yeah.
having them educated and starting the process is going to be really um, groundbreaking, in this world, changing the world. So you've done a lot. Like I said, you're a pioneer in this area, and you've got a lot of wonderful followers. Your website is amazing. The cookbooks the food is amazing. So it's really not that hard.
The food is amazing for people once they adapt to the lower salt intake. You know, at
Yes.
first it can be a challenge because people are addicted to this really salty, sugary, fatty food. But once you fast, or even if you don't fast, if you just persist, if you're patient with yourself, your taste actually goes through a process called neuroadaptation. We actually have done a study, it hasn't been published yet, where we measure the changes in the palate before and after fasting, and it turns out people become more sensitive and more reactive. So like, for example, Swiss chard that you might eat and not be too excited about. Post-fasting, you can actually taste the sodium that's naturally in the chard. It tastes much, much more intense. And so what happens is people go from where food tastes like crap to being much more acceptable. And then, of course, the longer you do it, the better it tastes. Till eventually you like eating good food, and you don't even want that salty, sugary, fatty processed crap that everybody else is living on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And so is it safe for people to even do like a mini fast on their own, or is that recommended? Do you think that's
So what we recommend is everybody consider doing intermittent fasting. This can be done safely regardless of if you're on medications or other things. You can still do some version of this. And basically what that is limiting your feeding window. So maybe you don't eat before, say, 9 in the morning. You don't eat after, say, 5 or 6 at night. What that means is you'll have a period of time between, say, 6 and 9, maybe as much as 16 hours where you're fasting.
right?
And it turns out that intermittent fasting, limited fasting, like 16 hours a day, is enough to induce some of these changes, but without complicating your medication usage or creating situations of risk or threat to people. I don't recommend that people do prolonged water-only fasting unless they've had a medical history exam and a proper monitoring.
Sure.
It's really not something that people do successfully, not in a controlled setting. But the intermittent fasting can absolutely be done safely by most people. Obviously, if you have special circumstances, you should consult with your physician. But the idea that you can limit your feeding window, you don't have to eat 16 hours a day. And just not eating, especially processed foods, 3 hours before you go to sleep means you sleep better, your energy starts coming up, you're able to exercise more, you feel better. So absolutely, I think intermittent fasting is useful. Some people carry it further. And they say, well, what about 1 or 2 days a week when I can take it easy? Maybe I'll reduce my caloric intake by eating just raw fruits and vegetables. So I'm getting about 600 calories a day. And maybe that'll help facilitate additional weight loss or other detoxification. That's a possible option. There are programs out there. Walter Longo, who's published some interesting research, has utilized his product called Prolon, which is a way people would take the Prolon only for 5 days. And, it's a type of intermittent fasting that people can do. Again, if you're on medications and other things, you want to be careful. But so lots of different ideas coming out that people may be able to do on their own. But water-only fasting, that's best done at one of the clinics that specialize in water-only fasting.
Oh yeah, because you're right there and medically supervising everything, so people know that they would.
Yeah, it gets complicated, particularly drug withdrawal, other issues.
Yeah.
You can't fast on medications. You got to go through the proper process of dealing with them.
Well, I'm glad that we're here to be able to share an option for people, because sometimes, like we said, they're limited on what they're able to do and their survival and things like that. So something like that can turn things around. amazingly. Have you worked with any children or younger people?
Yeah, we've worked with, young children. We've worked with, my oldest patient was just short of 108.
Oh,
I'm actually looking for a patient that would get to 110. That's actually been my goal. I haven't had one yet, but I keep working on it. We got a number of them that are done. I just did a 30-year follow-up on a patient
oh
who's
my gosh.
now 85, who was started at 55, and he had been a painter. And he came to me as a chiropractor because he was concerned he couldn't raise his arm to do the ceilings. He had osteoarthritis in the shoulder.
Mhm.
But he smoked and he drank and he was overweight. And so I explained to him that the chiropractic manipulative therapy and physical therapy wasn't going to be successful unless he was willing to get healthy. And that meant he had to quit smoking, he had to quit drinking, he had to have changed his diet. And he asked me if he had to do it forever. The dietary change. And I said, no, you just do it for 50 years. And that after 50 years, he could do whatever he wanted. And so he said, oh, you think you're funny, don't you? Anyway, long story short is he made the changes. He quit smoking, he quit drinking, did well. So I lost track of him after a while, and I just saw him again after 14 years. And he came in and he said he was coming in for a checkup. I asked him, was there anything bothering him? He said, no, he was doing okay. He said the diet that he was on seemed to be working because he was still working.
Wow.
Still working as a painter at 85. He said all of his crew had died. He said even his son had died at 60 years old from a heart attack.
Mhm.
And I said, oh, I'm so sorry, because I knew that his son used to work on his crew. In fact, his son had to do the ceilings because he couldn't raise his arm up. I said, I'm so sorry to hear about your son. He goes, well, he didn't want to do the diet. And he said, besides, it's okay because he can do the ceilings himself now. And I said, do you tell me that your shoulder arthritis went away? He goes, no, not really. He said, but he got an airless paint sprayer. So now he was able to do the ceilings. So he made another appointment. He made another appointment in 14 more years when he turns 99. But he said if anything comes up, he'll let me know.
What a great story that is. Oh my God. And there you go. It's making the choice to do something and changing the lifestyle and the diet. And some people will, some people won't. But at least they have options, and that's what we're teaching. And so I appreciate you being here and just explaining that all that you do and that you teach and share so generously to get these programs out, and not even charging these people. So that's healthpromoting.com is the website, and go there and learn so much more about what Dr. Goldhamer is sharing with people and making a difference and getting results and making sure that the lobbying is going on and all kinds of data and studies continue, because that's what we need to get out there. So any last words of wisdom for everybody, Doctor?
Hey, health results from healthful living. You want to be healthy, you have to focus on diet, sleep, and exercise. Those are the things that make the difference.
I'm glad that you said that, because it's not just one thing, it's a combination of things. So, well, again, great to have you here. I really appreciate it. Our viewers really appreciate it, and wish you all the best. God bless you, and everybody, thank you for being here. Good night.